All right, so first we're going to get started on making the pie dough, which I don't do anything crazy with pie dough. It's a mixture of all-purpose flour and pastry flour,
Okay.
which gives it a little bit more of a tender crust.
Nice.
But some people don't have pastry flour in their pantries, so all-purpose flour will work fine. I like to use King Arthur flour just because it's very accessible and very consistent and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really realize that flour can have that much of an impact on a dish.
Yeah, exactly. So generally, if you're using a pastry flour sort of thing like that, you do not want to use cake flour. But pastry flour like that, you just need to be careful if you're using all-purpose. You may need to adjust your water a little bit because it has a little bit more absorption.
Good to know.
Yeah, so basically the first thing we're going to do is all of our dry mix into the bowl. You can do this by hand too, but we'll do it on the stand mixer today just for ease.
Nice.
And the dry mix is just a combination of both flours and salt, and start to mix that up, and then we're going to start with the cold cube butter that's going in.
I have to comment on the butter because I just tasted some, but the color alone tells me that it's unique.
Yeah, so the butter that we use is a European style butter.
It's delicious.
What that means is that it's more cultured, so it has kind of a more like a yogurty, kind of cheesy kind of
it's
taste.
kind of tangy.
Yeah, they're also drier butter, which means that you'll end up with a flakier crust because the butter itself has less water in it. We get our butter locally, but the brands that I would recommend would be Plugra or Kerrygold is another one, which are available in most supermarkets.
Typically more expensive than standard butter?
Yeah, I would say it's probably about 25% more expensive. It does make such a tremendous difference.
Yeah,
though.
and you can maybe use a little less of it too.
Yeah,
in certain
exactly.
instances.
Yeah, so we're basically going to work this together on a pretty low speed. And again, if you can imagine you were doing this by hand, you would just be working it in until the dough starts to become kind of crumbly. It should only take a couple minutes. You want to sort of get the pieces down to I'd say walnut sized pieces.
Okay, so still pretty big.
Yeah, and the main thing that a lot of people do, so this dough is going to look kind of dry, especially at this stage. Even when we add the water in, it's going to look sort of not fully mixed.
Okay.
The fact is the act of rolling out the dough really is what finishes making the dough, finishes kneading the dough.
Okay.
And so you'll end up with a much flakier thing if you don't overmix it in the first
Right,
part.
so you want to try not to work it too much.
Exactly. So you can see here now that most of the butter has been absorbed. It's like a nice crumbly mix, and if you sort of look at it with your hand, it sort of starts to pack together here like this.
Looks like it has almost a sandy texture to it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's so it sort of just starts to come together like that. And then that means we're going to add a little bit of water here. You want the water to be as cold as possible.
Okay.
It doesn't have to have ice in it, but just make sure it's cold water.
Not warm.
Yeah, exactly. And I put a little squeeze of lemon juice in it, which is kind of like, I don't know, like a grandma kind of thing.
Yeah.
It sort of helps keep the dough tender, and in my opinion, it also prevents the dough from oxidizing. Oxygen can actually have kind of a negative impact on things like butter.
Right.
It changes the color somewhat.
Oh, how about that?
So yeah, so just a little squeeze of that. Some people use white vinegar.
I've heard vodka too. I don't know if that has the same effect.
Yeah, the vodka thing's actually kind of it's actually, because it adds moisture, but then the idea is that as it bakes, the alcohol bakes out, and so you end up with a drier end product.
Okay.
I've never really put much thought into that.
I've never tried it.
Yeah, but again, pastry in general, like this pie dough, you are looking for basically a very rich dough that's also very dry, and that's what's going to end up with a nice flaky thing. So,
and now you are a pastry chef.
Yes, I wasn't originally a pastry chef. I went to culinary school at the Art Institute of Philadelphia here. That's actually what brought me to Philadelphia in the first place.
Nice.
And then ended up just sort of working into pastry kitchens, and then that just became what I did.
Just became your thing.
Yeah, and I've been doing it for about almost 15 years now, which is
wow, that's awesome.
Incredible.
Now, did you grow up making, pies with your grandma? You said the lemon juice was a grandma trick.
Yeah. I did used to bake a lot with my grandma, actually. It was mostly just sort of like homemade, like a lot of cookies, lots of like Christmas cookie kind of thing. For sure, she was a huge inspiration for me, like cooking. Can you take that?
Sure.
Thank you. So you can see here how the dough is sort of looks almost like clay-like,
Kinda
right?
shaggy.
Yeah, exactly, but it's still sort of like not a uniform texture.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like with any sort of doughs like this is to stop it at this point, again, like not letting the machine take it all the way.
Right.
You'll get a little bit more of a delicate product if you basically stop it then and finish it by hand. You just have more control.
Right.
You know, I can really like fold it over and kind of knead it together just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even, some people, if you want to take it out onto the table, just give yourself a little bit more room. You can sort of, sorry.
Sure.
You can see that this sort of ends up being, you know.
Yeah, so it really starts coming together.
Yeah, but it should, like I said, it should look kind of crumbly.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of like, oh, this doesn't look mixed all the way, but in fact, all these little swirls of butter going through there is actually what you want. You want it to be
Right.
sort of laced with the butter in this case.
Nice.
So then the best thing to do with this would be to just wrap it in plastic wrap. And then keep it in the fridge for, I would say, you know, an hour, 2 hours, just to chill it up really, really nice before you go to work with it.
So you want to keep everything kind of cold throughout
Yeah,
this
exactly.
process.
Yep. So we have some of our finished pie dough here, which we can start to roll out.
That's a heck of a rolling pin. I
Yeah,
have to say.
yeah. I guess maybe it's proportionate to the person that's doing it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I like to use these aluminum pie pans.
Very
just
old
'cause-
school.
Yeah, exactly. I would say you can use a ceramic one by all means. I would not use the like disposable kind of ones.
Okay. How about glass?
Yeah, glass is fine. Exactly. Basically it comes down to just being a better conductor of heat. That's what you want to get a really nice solid bottom. Those thin pans just don't really ever get hot enough
Yeah.
to actually.
So
cook
you get a
the
soggy crust.
Yeah, exactly. Even like cast irons work okay. To be
Oh
honest.
yeah, I do it right in
Yeah.
your cast iron pan.
That's very old timey.
Yeah, for sure.
So-
Now, is this a family heirloom or you just
Oh no,
acquired
this
at
is a
some
new
point?
one. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I would say these are like the nicer ones. They have like the ball bearings in them. So,
Okay, they don't fall apart.
Yeah, I use like what are called, I believe, dumb pins, which are just the ones without.
Like a French rolling pin,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
tapered?
Yep, yeah. Those are sort of a little bit easier and not so cumbersome.
Yeah.
So
I like this though, it's good for show.
Yeah. So don't be as concerned about the edges cracking a little bit.
All right.
And again, like you want to use, I always say like use as much flour as you need, but not any more than you need.
Okay. Great tip.
Yeah, because I think what a lot of people do is sort of another like sort of technique is they sort of drop it on, and you'll see that I sort of cast it
Yeah.
over the side of it so that it sort of gets a little bit more of
Like
like
a
an even
swoosh.
mist
Right.
kind of thing rather
I like
than
that, flour
yeah.
mist.
And then basically we're going to just do, and I did not use the whole portion of dough. I'm going to reserve some of it for the top
Oh, okay.
because we're going to do a lattice crust here.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I always like, especially with something like rhubarb where it really has such a pretty look that you want to be able to show that off. So you can see here, so I sort of sheeted this out to about 1/4 of an inch, I'd say. I like the bottom crust is going to be a little bit thicker than the top crust because it's really there to hold in all that
Right.
that wet stuff. Whereas the top crust, you want to be pretty thin so that it bakes quickly. That's what a lot of people do the same thickness for the top and the bottom, and you end up with one of them not being cooked properly.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah.